morning to some, good afternoon to others, good evening to others. My name is Lisa Pulitzer, and I am going to be working with you guys today to make sure we're technically sound. If you have any issues, please just write to me in the chat box under the Walt Whitman Birthplace Events and Media Director name, so that if I can help you, if there's anything I can do to fix your mics or whatever. Welcome to to Poets Building Bridges, and I'm going to turn this over to Robert Savino. He's on our board of trustees, and thank you, Robert.
And thank you, Lisa, for sitting in today as our director over there of technical devices. My name is Robert Savino, and I'm a trustee at the Walt Whitman Birthplace. I greet you today on behalf of Executive Director Cynthia Shaw and the Walt Whitman Birthplace Association, and welcome you to the 7th series of Season 2 Triangulation Journey, Poets Building Bridges. Poets Building Bridges is produced by Poetrybay Productions for the Walt Whitman Birthplace and led by George Wallace, who's been a writer in residence at the Birthplace for the last 13 years. The Birthplace also offers a number of events throughout the year, many of them on Zoom, so I recommend that you check out our website, waltwhitman.org, for details. I thank Lisa again for helping us on the technical side. I thank you all for joining us today, all the poets and friends. And as always, I thank George for the continuance of this program, for everything he does for the Walt Whitman Birthplace, and for everything he does for poetry. And now, poets and friends, I turn the event over to George Wallace.
Great, very good. Thank you. Robert Savino, also a fine poet in his own right, and I think a 4th or 5th poet laureate of Suffolk County, distinguished poet, and continues to do a lot of great things for poetry here on Long Island and beyond. The Walt Whitman Birthplace, I'll tell you very briefly, all of you who are joining us for the first time, became a excuse me, a national monument in 1959 after it had been a farmhouse that had been used by migrant farm workers as a place to stay as they were passing through part of the migrant labor stream. When they recognized that this is the house that Walt Whitman's father had built, as a model house, as a house developer in the 1820s or 30s, whatever it was, and that Walt was actually born here, people figured we really need to do something about it. So you'd think that was an automatic, but as it turned out, there's a controversy about it because in 1959, Walt's reputation was not quite as secure as it is today as the good, great poet of America and the international figure that he is today. As a matter of fact, some people thought that he was kind of a questionable character because of his politics and his sexuality and other matters like that. So there's a lot of letters back and forth to the editor saying, yes, it's a great idea to make this a monument. Others saying, why would you want to preserve the house of Walt Whitman? That's ridiculous. That would be like preserving the house of Elvis Presley. That was in 1959. Well, of course, now we have in Nashville, we do have both Elvis's house enshrined and Walt Whitman's birthplace enshrined. So you see how times change. Walt Whitman Birthplace is very nice to do what they do and allowing poetry to thrive in various capacities and taking on this role very seriously. They could just be people who preserve a house. They could be people who just preserve the Walt Whitman heritage, but to be part of the local, regional, national, and now international poetry communities and facilitator of that is something I'm quite proud to see them doing. So thank you all for that. Poets Building Bridges is something we started last year, March. We did it for 1 month. We actually did it because England had your poetry month. I guess maybe Ireland did as well. So once a week, we triangulated with people in various places around the world. India, China, England, United States. It was really an international phenomenon. We did 5 weeks in a row. It went so well that the Walt Whitman Birthplace said, let's do it. We'll do it next year. We'll do it once a month. So that's what we've been doing. This is our 2nd season of Poets Building Bridges, a triangulation project. And as you can see, we bring together poets, a group of poets from 3 different locations around the world, so that they have a chance to show what they do, and that they have an opportunity to listen to each other in a way that's more than just any random collection of 12 heads, in a Hollywood Squares box. So this is the construct of Poets Building Bridges. I'm proud to be able to have people with us today from Ireland, from Dallas, Texas, and from Los Angeles, California. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this one over to Afric McGlinchey, who was a writer in a Walt's Walking with Walt series for us, a very distinguished writer in Ireland, Cork, Ireland, and a good friend to us here at the Birthplace. Welcome, Afric.
Thank you so much, George. It's an absolute delight and a pleasure to be here with all of you. And thank you so much to my fellow Irish poets for joining us. As the theme was bridges, connecting via, poets building bridges, I thought the idea of connecting was a lovely one. And in Ireland, we have a very small community. We're very tightly knit because I think we're very lucky to have a lot of festivals. And so at some point or another, we are going to run into each other. So, and we get to hang out with very exceptional writers nearly every month of the year, if we're lucky. So I have had the good fortune of meeting all three of these poets. I met John at the Bantry Festival. We were at a workshop together, and I was so impressed with his critiquing that I asked him if he would, if you'd consider an email exchange where we swapped poems. And that's how we started our friendship. And it went on for many years and it was extremely fruitful, a very fruitful exchange. And I absolutely appreciate it so much, John. You've no idea. And he was also very kind enough to launch my second collection. And then I met Annemarie when I was moderating an event at the Cork International Poetry Festival, and she was an absolute delight. So I was so happy to have met you in person, Annemarie, and because I've heard your performances at various festivals, but it was just great to meet you in person. And then same thing with Stephen. I met you when you were launching your first chapbook in O'Vale, way back. And then I had the great pleasure of reading with you at that very bizarre event at Facebook on World Poetry Days. It was just fun to spend the day with you. So that's how we connect in Ireland. It being an island, I mean, we're north and south of the country today. And in fact, Annemarie is on an island doing facilitating a writer's retreat. So thanks so much for escaping for a minute just to come and share some poems with us, Annemarie. So I thought instead of, you have the bios of the three poets, so I thought I'd skip the bios and just say they're all multi-award winning and they're all much celebrated and loved in Ireland. They're very popular, these three poets, and they're three of my favorites. And also they have a connection with America. Each of them has a connection with America because Stephen was a recipient of the E.M. Forster Award from the American Academy of Arts and Letters. And he's also given readings all up and down the East Coast. Annemarie will be touring festivals this year in the States, and she's also going to be writer in residence at the Reinhardt Festival at the University in Atlanta, Georgia. And John is a recipient of the Key West Bursary, and he has a number of poems responding to his American experiences. So there are connections all together between our two, across the water. So George said I should contribute myself as well. So I'm just going to read one poem. I'll start us off with one poem and then we'll move on to the other poets. My poem is, it's about the complexities of a long-term relationship. And it's called The Attic and the Id. No stair to take me there. Just a drop-down ladder that vanishes after my vanishing feet. A spider abseils a single thread among the dust motes to a landing strip with chittens that intuit when to cling and when release. No supper tonight. I'm dining on silence, making my own silk road. No inclination for bed. I sleep poorly anyway, and here is respite from the pressure even to try. Instead, I'm dipping into your African story. You dispensed with socks and scents, took to night spots and sex workers, gambled away all your belongings in 20 minutes. I compare my safe life with your adventures, and back I go to our foray into those African clubs where slim-hipped women crossed legs seductively, flashing thigh and crotch, and stared at you, the only white man. You took my hand, startled the floor with moves you learned from mambas and black rhythm. This reminding me of last night's reggae and debarras, decades falling away, and the wall he pushed me up against to kiss me, starting a thrill I haven't felt in years, that was just as quickly quenched when he spied his ex and desisted. And oh, I miss your nonchalance, forbidden glance that left me in no doubt and leaves me wanting still. Pulse is in the mind more than the body. I find that I touch strangers more easily than family. Let me return to the memory of that surprise kiss, and perhaps another, if the glass is full and lights are low. He wants me younger too, a man thing primed to want the taut and thin, and I disappoint, but can swerve his thoughts to lust with the erotica of words. From you and this spider, I learn the language of a web, feel ready now to leave the attic, drop down to begin weaving. So now to the other poems. I made a mess of that. George has supplied the bios, as I said, so if you'd like to read more about them, you can check those out. But could I ask you to read first, John?
I'd be delighted to. Thanks very much, Afric. And hello, everybody. It's lovely to be in the glow of Whitman and to be connected through the magic of the internet with so many people and so many places. First poem that I'd like to read is called The Island. We tend to reach islands across bridges, so I thought it would be appropriate. It's set in a place called the Guera, which is very close to where I live here in County Cork. It's a submerged glacial wood, which was cut down for hydroelectricity in the 1950s. It's very beautiful, but also a very eerie place. And I went walking there with my son Alexander some years back. And this poem is about that particular experience. The Island, for Alexander. We spared nowhere that day on the Guera, your courage spurring me on to cross the sunken stretch at the end of the old road where we could explore the undulating woodland I had admired so often from a distance, to discover its hillocks were just builder's rubble from another time when that kind of thing was permissible, and cross the mud flats I was always told would swallow a man whole. I followed your lead, as you would gauge the hidden depth of step perfectly, thrilling in the sinking in and hauling out again, until we reached the island I had never thought I would find a way to get to, going into the thicket center and calling for you to follow me. But you just stood out there waiting, all light draining into the darkening mire, as if to say, you go on, I will stay apart now out here while I have no need. I want to read a couple of poems about spring, if I may. And these poems typically have birds in them. I'm obsessed with birds. And the first one is called Easement. Easement. Spring's other gift is the illusion of youth. Today, still in recovery, I sit on the front terrace, a generous glass in hand, to hear the birds sing, vigorous as fiddlers, and give up all my senses to the song of every bird, of Ballymichael, Koniecki, Crossmahon, Warrenscourt, all the way back to Kilbarry, where the quick ticking of a wren with the insistence of Mossy Brady's polite poetic stammer silences everything. The next one is called Etude. It's about spring. It's about words. It's about sounds, I suppose, really. Etude. All day the hiss, the press, the yes of sycamores in first fresh leaf, as if welcoming themselves in, as if melting the wind passing through them. And, now that I listen, the ongoing arachnid whine of harvesters laying down swathes somewhere around Kilbarry, a first cut, dry for the blade at last. Just there, the score of a car along Beamish's line, and like heartbeat or breath, always in the inner ear, the songbirds chiming and half rhyming their memes and old motifs and oblique herewiths and why nots and what's more besides. Spring thrushes. Where they winter, we can't be sure. There is the science, but that's no answer. And how do they know just when to come onto the lawn from the kitchen wood? So perfectly pointed and preened, sprung just right for flicking away leaves and drilling under, locking stock still every half minute, beak strings wriggling. Another hop skip forward, a pause. Their day has come, and they're having all of it. The next one is a tree creeper. The tree creeper is a familiar bird in these parts, and she does what she's described as is she's a tree creeper, a beautiful tiny creature. Tree creeper. Now is time for prizing, when cold finally eases and bare limbs grow limber in the viable air that incubates titbits for the fits and starts of grey-brown. By chance we see scale and swivel the sycamores intrepidly. Out of sight now, on the far side, as if to hide an unlikely white chest, as if knowing that we too will flit to the next distraction. How am I doing for time, Afric? I can't hear you, sorry.
How's he doing, George?
Is that enough? Would you like one more?
Yeah.
The last one is a not a bird poem. It's a poem I wrote for a poet called Jerry Murphy, who I just met about 2 hours ago in Cork City in the English market. Jerry was 70 recently, and a local publisher published a festschrift for him and asked me to write a couple of poems. This one is called The Bard's Curse. And all the words I use in this are words that were created by Shakespeare. There were new words or new expressions when he used them. So this is my last poem, and thank you so much for including me in this extraordinary collection, and particularly with Stephen and Afric and everybody here, Annemarie, everybody, all my Irish colleagues whom I admire so much, and all the new friends that are surrounding me here. It's called The Bard's Curse. Unsex the tortive savages, their leaky laments as madcap as any lackluster marriage bed. Laughable land rats exposed in an eye wink for the fanged and flirt-gilled, foul-mouthed Franciscans they are. Blood-sucking arch villains, blusterers the lot, dog-weary and distrustful, not gnarling a dwight for the hurly keech or brisky kitchen wench. Lonely lewdsters of the never-ending, pious pignuts to a man, priceless and profitless, besmirchers of the seamy stocking, each one a useless, well-read fap. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. That was fantastic. Absolutely beautiful. I loved that last poem in particular. Annemarie, could you read next?
Hi everyone, Mara Deeb Acharja. It's lovely to be joining you across time and space. Thank you, George, for the warm welcome, and Afric for the gorgeous introduction, thought-provoking and thoughtful as always, and John for the beautiful reading. So I am on an island off Cork. It's very misty. I couldn't get hooked up beside a window to show you the view, but it's really gorgeous here. And at the same time, I'm feeling I couldn't be any further away from home. I'm literally at the other end of the country because I'm originally from Donegal. So I'll read 3 poems with a Donegal connection. And the first one is an ode to my mother, and it features the word M-A-R-E as opposed to another mare. The mare's eye. On the hill of saints, we hang white sheets against the sun. I raise them up, my mother pegs the corners. To become a woman is to become not unlike an animal, she says, as she braids my hair into a river down along the center of my skull. Someday you will be beautiful. We milk the goats, we wash the walls, we feed all the infant mouths in all the cots. One day the gods will offer you choices. My mother, who left the field of her father for my father's field, walks out sometimes in the rain to stand on the edge of ferns and look into the mare's eye deep in the attic. There are in the pine cupboard there is a rope. But the mare's eye is an orb that shines, as whole and undisturbed as any future she might yet encounter. Perhaps she sees within that iris a transformed shadow of the many-chambered heart. I am teaching you to know the earth, she says. Look at my hands, they're already bone. So I grew up in northwest Donegal, a rural, boggy landscape that is very much associated with the ancient myth of Balor of the Evil Eye, who was a giant, a Fomorian giant, who locked his daughter Ethna into a tower on Tory Island. And when I was growing up, a lot of that myth centered around Balor of the Evil Eye and his only surviving grandson, Lu, the god of light. But I was really interested in Ethna, the daughter. A villager speaks of Ethna. How many men did it take to drag the girl up into the island tower? Did she spit or kick? Did she try to bite through woolen binds? Lifting clumps of skin, hair, blood beneath a fingernail, did she struggle? Or was she simply led like a calf by hazel switch into a den? An island daughter bears the rage of pirates in her bones. An island daughter can empty tombs with a curse. Here in the aftermoon of all that followed, infants, marriage, loss, a badger lies wide open in the poison glen, red FitzGerald spilling out. It is written here among the heather rocks and electric eyes. She was not her father's animal. She was not her husband's prize. So I'm very inspired by landscape, and I'm interested in the left behind sites of care institutions in Ireland, specifically the care institutions into which mothers and children were taken. So I write a lot on that subject. I'm actually going to move to a different part of the country. I'm going to move away from Donegal to County Louth in this final poem. It's set at St. Joseph's Industrial School in Dundalk in Louth. And I revisited this particular site because St. Joseph's Industrial School was, well, it was better known as an orphanage for girls run by the Sisters of Mercy. The poem is called Sow Thistle. Here in the aftermath of the orphanage, I watched the local schoolgirls gathering along the street's chipped black railings, and 2 by 2 link slender arms to troop uptown against the sun, all high heads and clear temples, all grit and burning, all clean hair flashing ponies. Who knows the earth more than a girl? Who knows the auguries of stone? We were often told, you are the lowest of the low. We cupped our hands to the grass to see how low. What cannot be written is rising up through the cracks. I kneel to a sow thistle, leaf starred and gold between my fingers, the stalk throbbing light. I encounter its living testimony as closely as I would encounter the expert findings of any state report. Thank you. Thank you, Churreáin.
Thank you, Annemarie. That was absolutely stunning as always. So finally, can we have you, Stephen? Looking forward to hearing your poems. It's been a while.
Thank you. Thanks, Afric. And yeah, thanks, Annemarie and John. Thanks for the poem. So lovely to see you in your various places, and to echo John, hello, new friends everywhere else. I'm gonna read 3 poems. I'm gonna start a little timer so I don't exceed it. I read a story last week in the news. You probably saw it. All the poets in the world saw it. It was, but I think I got there first. I could be wrong, but I'm also ashamed of myself, is the nature of this poem. It's a great story about scientists, ant scientists, that is the little insects, who discovered that there's a particular pheromone that ants release, I guess, when they die, that prompts the rest of the colony to bury them, which is very interesting. Some scientists put this pheromone on a living ant, and the rest of the colony tried to bury that ant without really understanding that it was living. Absolutely irresistible, right? It's okay. I'm ashamed of myself, so I tried to have my cake and eat it here. So here's a poem on ants. Pliny thought ants, besides us, were the only creatures sufficiently humane to bury their dead. Not right. Right enough. If you are curious with science or cruel, daub on an ant's Atlantean back the pheromone, a lipid, some degrading fat, which signals death, and observe the colony wake a living ant and pall him to the grave into which he cannot and will not go. Do you think of your friends? I do. And this is where the poem would turn, about coordinates of irony or analogue. Into what? I'm bored of that. This morning, the sun dazzled through the carriage window. A pleasure boat named Skedaddle, I saw for a second, drifted under the railway bridge. At Castle Rock, a woman and her daughter remonstrated with the conductor, who stayed his hand on a hip-strung coin dispenser. The sort of day where if you were him, you'd say, to heck with it, and print tickets to everywhere in your power and take nothing for them. Here, sir, madam, you, my friend, take this and go wherever you must, as far as my auspices, few as they are, can grant you. Go. I'm going to, thank you. I'm going to read a poem that is a little bit longer. I'm going to keep an eye on the time. It has time differences in it. I mean, we could contrive any connection, right? But this one has time differences in it. It's about, last Christmas I watched Casablanca because it was on. And I spent the sort of time watching it thinking, why is this a Christmas movie? Why is this a Christmas film? I don't know the answer, but I tried to write through that to try and get somewhere. So yes, this poem makes it as far as California, I guess, by line 4, you'll be pleased to know. Casablanca at Christmas. If it's December 1941 in Casablanca, what time is it in New York? Bogart says in Burbank, disguised as Morocco, as Rick, who sticks his neck out for no one. Asleep in New York, asleep all over America. In unoccupied France, there are no Christmas trees to droop with the hyper hues of mercury glass, no baubled satin, no streamers, no carols. Pearl Harbor hasn't happened yet and won't. So what makes Casablanca a Christmas film? But Bogart, reasonably sober in a bazaar stacked with linen napkins and swaddling cloths, was born on Christmas Day is incidental. Jesus was stuck with a wow finish too. He sticks his neck out for no one, he keeps saying. Rick, who ran guns to Ethiopia in the 30s and fought Franco's fascists in Spain, is numb now and laissez-faire and fucked off. But whatever they say he sticks his neck out for, in the end, I'm not convinced. If mercy is a choice, it isn't mercy. In the Lockheed, soon to be a star, growing deluminate over the Strait of Gibraltar, the lovers are bound for Western heaven, Rick to the south of the continent, the Nazi what follows. And what of everyone not disentangled from the plot? Jolly Carl with the good brandy, Yvonne singing La Marseillaise through real tears, and Sam, who had Paris just as much as anyone. Always there are people glory shows up too late for. The boys, for example, whose throats Herod's soldiers put their swords to, who didn't know they weren't someone else, who stuck their necks out for no one. All across Bethlehem, they must have made heaps of the bodies, hills of boys falling accidentally through the years, landing in the gestures of saints. Don't know if I got there in the end, but sure, it's the journey, right? It's a strange poem, but thanks. I'm going to read one poem, one more poem. I'm not really a religious person, but I keep writing about religious things. I don't know where it's coming from. I think it's that struggle of that struggle we have in poems between the concrete and the real, and the metaphysical and the elsewhere, which maps on very nicely to our real lives, right, and our spiritual elsewheres. I think that's what's bothering me. But here's a poem with a kind of provocative title. The capital of heaven is the living. I don't know what I mean by that yet, but it has less to do with the trace of gold each person contains. A thought is heavier, and more with a moment today under the great canopy of oak trees. In the park where it is always summer, a sister teaches her brother to hold a segment of clementine up to the sun, so the light can find the seed with the future in it, which he can toss over his shoulder like salt at misfortune. So much of everything is beyond intention. So much of sacrifice is pleasure. If it must be inevitable, let there be lifetimes and lifetimes before orange trees grow wild here in the sun-scorched grass. I don't mean it's paved with bones, but I do. I want to say it again to make it mean something different. The capital of heaven is the living. Thanks very much. Excuse the rain.
Wow. Fantastic. Wow. That was absolutely stunning. Thank you so much, Stephen. And that's our lot, George.
Yeah, and a good lot it was. Thank you. Afric, thank you for bringing your friends. Two, at least, are from County Cork, which I was looking at the map, I would realize is way down south. And Donegal, which is almost Northern Ireland, is, I think Annemarie's from there originally. I did notice that as Stephen works in Belfast, which leads me to ask about the Northern Irish poets and your sense of association with them, or not at all. We, of course, in America think of late 19th, early 20th century poets from Ireland, Oscar Wilde, William Butler Yeats. But then the latter part of the 20th century, we had an infusion of major Northern Irish poets to New York and America, Seamus Heaney and Paul Muldoon and Derek Vaughan, the three that I think of. So are these poets that you consider part of your circle of poetry in Ireland, or is that a distinct thing, Northern Ireland, for you?
Shall I answer that? I'll answer as best I can, George. Thank you. I mean, I would imagine that all of those people consider themselves very much to be Irish poets. They might have been born, I guess, in Northern Ireland. You know, I'm not sure. I mean, I expect there is a slightly different identity. There's slightly different, well, significantly different political and economic circumstances in the 1950s and 60s and onwards. They seem to me to be Irish poets, I guess. So I don't make a meaningful distinction, I suppose, between the two groups. But as far as I can say.
Okay. Anybody want to add to that? Afric?
Yeah, I would say we like to claim the Northern Irish poets. They are outstanding. I don't know what it is about the North, what the atmosphere is. Possibly it is the history. It's so rich there.
Yeah.
It's always that kind of background is always rich material for poetry. But even when that, it's also the amazing turn of phrase. I don't know what it is. It's just the something very magical that comes out of the North, and I'd include Ulster in that too, Annemarie. It's the quality of the turn of expression, the turn of phrase. I think possibly that there's an Irish influence as well in Donegal. That the language itself, it kind of seeps up through into English, and there's something just very magical about it. So yeah. So I always think of Ireland as the entire island when I think of Irish poetry.
Yeah, well, there's down in Bisbee, Arizona, there's a eclectic Celt show, which is about Irish and Celtic music. You see the spread, the diaspora of Celtic influence, or Irish Celtic influence anyway. And there is a permeability. T.S. Eliot's claimed by the Brits, even though he's from St. Louis, and W.H.Auden was a major figure here in New York, even though he's from Britain. So there's a lot of permeability. Thank you all for that work that you've given us. Next, I'm going to introduce here he is, Paul Koniecki. Paul Koniecki, who I had the pleasure of going down to Dallas and visiting with him and going to Deep Ellum. We did a show in Deep Ellum at a very nice bookstore there. For those of you who've maybe heard the term or don't know exactly what the term means, Deep Ellum is a section of Dallas where they have there's a lot of blues activity in clubs. Blind Leonard Jefferson was born there. Blind Willie Johnson, Lead Belly was from there as well. So a great tradition. Paul and his friends across the Midwest, which they sometimes talk to themselves as being the flyover states, Kansas and Missouri and Arkansas and Dallas. It's a very, very rich poetry tradition in this part of the United States. And Dallas is part of that. Paul is part of that, and the people in he's world with him today are certainly part of that. So please welcome Paul Koniecki.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Paul Koniecki. Great to be with you. Thank you so much, George. I think of that, if you build it, they will come. Definitely thank you for building these vital connections and these vital bridges. And hello LA, and hello Ireland. I just have to mention some years back, I was able to go over and feature at the what was then called the Blackwater Poetry Festival in Fermoy. I think later was referred to as the Fermoy Poetry Festival. And listening to your voices and hearing you read those amazing poems was really taking me back. The man who wrote that, some of you may have known, Gene Barry, was an incredible poet and an even more incredible human. And he came over and featured for us here in the States as we had featured for him there in Ireland. And he just passed recently. So if you saw me, quite a bit of tearing up, but with a lot of fond, great memories. So thank you for that. And we're here at, I want to mention, just outside of Dallas in Corsicana, Texas, at the 100 West Artist Residency. They were nice enough to bring us in. And if you could see this place, George and friends, it's covered with gorgeous art and also art in various stages of becoming gorgeous pieces of art. So it's really an amazing artist residency, 100 West Artist Residency. They were nice enough to bring us in. I'm going to start, and then the poet Reverie Koniecki, my partner in life, my wife, my spouse. And if you're wondering why I'm opening, it's because not that I'm her husband, but that lately she has been stacking the different awards and accolades like Q-tips. And so definitely I'm learning and hoping that humility will help my poetry and that I needed to be the one to open. So without further ado, this first poem is for Haiti, and it's called Help, It Is Coming. And it begins with a quote from Barbara Ducharme. He rocks back and forth in a trance, eyes rolling in his head. Help, it is coming. A boy stands small beside a tunnel. Passers-by whisper in Wolof or French. The tunnel steps ascend by turns, like ginger or fawn. Below, some call him a god, some call him the devil. The wall behind them once read, Francois Duvalier eats Dolly Madison pastries. Now maybe Doc eats paste. The boy is called Mignon. I misunderstand and name him Minnow. He appears inside my brain in November 2009. I didn't speak Latin then. I still don't. Wait for me outside the rubble and the blood. I will call for you like a drop of water in your ear. The first two sentences I translated were, I cannot control where I land, and sorry about your phone. Then I dropped it in the sink. Minnow possessed me to write this poem in January, the last thing we said together. Help, it is coming. In my visions, he was harder than mahogany and softer than onyx. I think water is time's most perfidious disguise. I think he was our only God. Now I'd like to take you, I grew up as a young man, a very rough and tumble neighborhood. And this is a bit of an homage back to that, titled Floating or Flying University. Mr. Bandittini taught our 10th grade social studies class, an old Jesuit from Marquette, who was always saying things like, there'll be time enough to sleep when you're dead. At well over 6 feet tall, with steel pad eyebrows large enough to fly coach and know Vince Lombardi's middle name, the day he pulled me aside to show me books about the secret traveling libraries of Warsaw and the illegal classes Marie Curie attended under Russian occupation, I wasn't sure if he had a soft spot for Poles or thought I should start experimenting with truancy. When, like a city at war, the clouds over the gymnasium turned back and back again, circling, silent as an anti-bell, and the light shrank, drunk on ominous foretelling, mimicking heartbeats in danger, the way a violin solo signals trouble in a movie. As I saw bowl-cut Timmy being cornered by Kellenhofer, the kid at school voted most popularly avoided if you ever wanted to eat dinner again. With holes for eyes I knew well, and a ring with a corona of spikes, he kept sharpened on a rasp the size of a 4th of July sparkler. So if you saw him alone, you already knew he was king. Shooing bowl-cut Timmy on down the silver slip of sidewalk safety, Kellenhofer and I found each other alone, and I found what it would take to make him abdicate the throne, even if only for a secret fleeting half an hour. Even as I swore inside to someday grow Bandittini eyebrows, hoping against hope when it happened again, maybe they could catch half of the blood. Like Marie Curie studying in a time when being caught at any school meant certain death. Like me actually telling someone the stitches I catch at home are born of a type of occupation and a kind of study too. All right, staying in that time frame, this next poem was first published by George Wallace at Poetrybay, and it is titled Tarmac Sacrifice. Tarmac is defined as the moon sitting on the side of the world in a dead thing's eyes, silent as embarrassment against a shock of wheat and wild grass, surprised it has been tamed by the Department of Transportation, or the material used for surfacing roads, consisting of crushed rock mixed with molten tar and smelling this road's fresh and acrid coat. I remember my father's mother forgetting his birthday repeatedly and his brothers mocking him. And I remember walking home with Timmy Newman from the Greenfield Park swimming pool one extra hot summer's day, popping asphalt bubbles with our toes. And my father irate with the prospect of cleaning the impenetrable mess as the sun set and the heat rose in our garage, and he removed my feet with a metal wire brush and turpentine, and I reached up and touched his enraged face and felt the red childhood home of tears. This one is titled My First Ride. My first ride was a Torino with a hole in the floorboard of the passenger seat. I picked you up that night to see a real play, Tartuffe by Moliere. I could only just afford tickets and the courage to ask. Not a good car, too. Emptiness is a stone in a field, a metal ice cube tray, a sticking to the skin, wanting to be warmer or colder or bigger or smaller or greater than it thinks, knowing all along nothing is worse than alone. As the window fogged and foolishly I pushed against everything soft. You said, I've lost a heel. Remembering the floorboard, we rolled out in the moon dark and swore our snow angels would die free, kicking arms and waving legs in unison, and in the frostbite and the broken curfew, forgave the other shoe. Everyone is a migrant for love. Let's see if I can find it. I had hoped to finish things up here for you. All right, and again, thank you all so much for listening. This one is for Aleppo, for Anas al-Basha, and for Aleppo, titled Haptic and the History of Making Glass. His furnaces are an ocean of invisible sun. No, my father works there. We can see the knuckle sweat and we can see the waves. Our lost country teaches us to carry forward in bare hands the idea of learning by touch. While jobs are closing irises, each second ticks with the softness of a shrapnel crucifixion. In line for food, we recall the difference between marinade and tenderize. touching explosions, rejoinder of powder and shells, lambast of plaster piled where the word rubble is ashamed. It doesn't have more R's to give you. Terrible rest before the return of daylit horror or war of art itself, blankets of glass, alone's disaster shaking more white powder from its frayed and curling hair. Syria is a live mosaic walking. The dark hole of the night is a laughing mouth. One more rust red and orange ambulance holding one more rust red and orange boy lightly in its maw like an angel of utopia being made to fight with its mouth full, or a rescue dog lost in the snow. El Basha, the clown of Aleppo, is dead. Elders cry paper mache, missiles, the rust red boy is calling. The mop top ragamuffin has half of his head covered in mud. The Baron Hotel is a pontoon floating by the middle of the city. I worry what it moors to must be a ghost. Gypsum catcher, skulls with no hair for dust. The world is less. Electric screen. Aleppo is us. To make glass, sand must be heated in excess of 3,200 degrees. The ocean is a dream, furnace of invisible sun. The sky is the crematorium, white, white, white. Rocket death is powder and fire and white. Thank you.
All right, hello from Corsicana. I'm Reverie Koniecki, and I'm gonna read a couple of poems. Some of them are from my books that just came out this year. One is called To the God of Sore Feet and Bad Backs, and the other one is called it's called The Wars That Steer Us. This first poem that I'm reading is relatively new, and it's called The Year of the Deductible. My mother presses the comb to my scalp. The world between us has sprouted square roots. The hull of every boat curves to water, the way the ocean softens the edges of continents. A nation is just a conjunction for two trains coming, like a head in the crook of an elbow. In this tradition, my mother's comb splits all of my tangles, creating borders of braids with puckered uniform plots. We pay our respects with lumpy strands spun by knobby knuckles pressed against my scalp, knees pressed into my back. When I resist, a deft thwack against my head. Grease slick across my forehead, sparkles like a tiara at a cotillion. It's the shiny things that bear claw trap you. She tells me how she once loved my father, but never how he loved her. No one asks the question, who will indemnify us? My mother presses the comb to my scalp, as if to say, this is mine. My silence is more deafening than the growling stomach of a small riot. Okay, this next one is called Another Video. Have you seen the video yet? My husband asks. I am not going to watch another Black man die on film, I say. I dodge the bullet of reality with a list of shoulds and should nots. Black death should be dignified. Black death shouldn't be a spectacle. Black death shouldn't be trusted to the talons of the police. Black death shouldn't be a preemptive sentence. Lies I tell myself. If I don't watch, I'll stop the loop of him dying over and over again. If I don't watch, I'll be able to breathe without the American dream tightening around my throat. If I look away, it won't hurt so much. Think of the mothers with their cavernous sorrow and open wombs cocooning their bodies as they watch their boys get pulled from existence. Boys who could have been mine with confident smiles and youthful swagger. The boy is mine. the imprint of his first howls in the world, a clenched fist for a nipple and hungry grunts, a body curled like a kidney bean, the squeak of his swing as it propels back and forth in simulated flight, the mutual longing for his head on my chest. First, birthday, riding a bike, girlfriend, heartache, dying. Think of their mothers as their flesh is separated from the bone, as their sons' eyes are left for carrion eyes. This next one is called Documentary for Black Girls in Heaven for Latasha Harlins. The scene, a bustling airport. She searches the crowd, but doesn't know what she is searching for. She smells of bar soap, pressed hair, and incense. Her baby cheeks magnify her innocence. She follows the momentum until it spills her out to the ground transportation area. The camera pans to her mother, who extends her arms in welcome. Mist swirls around her belly, which extends like the curve of a regression on an XY axis. She kisses her on the cheek and guides her to the waiting bus. I didn't think the dead could give birth, she says. There is a grid system in the universe, her mother replies. She is just as perplexed as the gods were when Esu tricked them. She bites her nails and looks out the window furtively. Mountains that would put Kilimanjaro to shame loom over the landscape. Palm trees with deceptively lanky torsos line the boulevard. She can see the shoreline just west of them, where the water rolls off glaciers like Spanish R's. Where are we, she asks, pulling her hand from her mouth. The bus screeches to a stop, and several passengers, all wearing bathing suits and flip-flops, get off. There are no guns here, her mother says, stroking her pregnant abdomen. They take off again. She begins to sing, starting off soft and low like a funeral hymn, and rising to slow but steady whole notes that sprout ethereal bodies that dart about the seats of the bus. Her heart races despite not remembering the orange juice, because black eyes are windows to the dream that continues to fail, just as the paradox of zero quantifies nothing. These next two are from my book, To the God of Sore Feet and Bad Backs. This one is called When Your Oldest Daughter Gets Mono. You make apple ginger tea in the crock pot. You ruminate about the health properties of cinnamon and fresh ginger, how they're supposed to be the cure-all for everything, how the vitamin C from the freshly cut apples and limes will surely boost her immune system. You stir and think about how last night was the first time in years she'd asked you for a massage, and how surprised you were to discover that she still has that dry patch of raised skin on her left ankle, and how automatically your fingers traveled back in time to when you first brought her home from the hospital to that tiny 2-bedroom apartment on North Ames Street. You are surprised that you still remember the detail of the pink flower swirling green stem wallpaper, the green cushioned rocker and its matching moving ottoman that you put together yourself. You are surprised at how much your body aches for the absence of hers, how time has cleaved your bodies further and further apart. This is the peninsula that broke off and became an island. You think of the first time your mother drove you over the Chesapeake Bay Bridge as you knead her elongated legs. You wonder if she'll have more mercy than you, who just stood there in the lobby of Davidson Hall for a nanosecond before offering your mother a pageant wave and rising to the 4th floor where you would bloom into a freshman. You wonder if she'll allow you to cradle her one last time, if she'll pretend to not be embarrassed at your sentimentality. You roll your thumbs over the birthmark on her back. You remember how you used to give her lavender baths in the sink. You want to lift her, to accordion those arms and legs so she fits into your lap again. You want to hold her head fast to your chest as if both of your lives depend on this contact. You want to rock her till she falls asleep, to listen to each breath. You want to believe that each collapse of her chest will be followed by a subsequent rise. This last one is called The Healing Room. The healing room sits on top of Prayer Mountain. It isn't really a mountain, just a hill in a land marked by flatness, by steadiness, but it's the highest point of elevation in this area. It is early, soft tendrils of sun, most hopeful, like a rightful childhood, scripted so smoothly, you believe this is the way things should be. The gazebo where we wed stands in the center of this postcard-worthy scene, overlooking the lake and the city. A playground, wooded and canopied, yellow, green, and red, stands despite being unused. A red fire hydrant stands firmly in the thin space where the road meets the strip of grassy plain, just in case. The memory of unplanned burning at the side of the highway during much hotter months remains in the peripheral. I swore I'd never come back after. On the radio, they speak of Fidel's death. In Little Havana, Miami, people banged pots and pans, celebrating the end of oppression. The morning clouds gather in protection. A cross at the top of the gazebo sits heavily on the roof. I can't seem to process you as I should. Who would place faith in control of a dictator? Only the desperate, you think, but are too polite to say. Remember, it only took a dozen men to start a revolution, small enough to do without, but enough. In the healing room, all of this matters because this is real. Fidel is dead, and in this version of the dream, those who risk everything to love you will only later risk everything to escape you. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Reverie Koniecki. The block has just been named in her name, Reverie Koniecki. It's because that is Paul's, they're together. And Paul mentioned that she's up for awards, but he was modest about it. She's up for the Maya Angelou Book Award, I think in Kansas City. So congratulations to that, Reverie. Good luck with it. Hope you win. Beautiful. So we're doing, this is great for timing. I have to compliment everybody in the room for like not blacking out and disappearing, sticking around for each other and listening. That's you're all really good troopers. So I like what you're doing by sticking around for that. Thank you all for that. Just as a Reverie, was reading about Chesapeake Bay from Dallas, Texas, and Stephen was reading about an American movie about Morocco. And there's an interpenetration between the places we're from and the international experiences and influences on us. And I think you'll find out with our next group of very cosmopolitan readers from Los Angeles. They are led by Richard Modiano, who is a native LA, Southern Cal guy. But Ellyn, maybe I think is from Milwaukee, and S.A. I think is actually from San Antonio originally. But every one of the people that you're going to hear from LA are absolutely, totally immersed in being the LA experience and fundamental to the LA poetry experience as it exists today. In large part, but not only because of the great work being done in poetry for many years and recently in Venice Beach, and particularly Beyond Baroque, of which they've all been a part, and particularly Richard Modiano. He's been on the board there, S.A. as well. And I'll let Richard introduce himself and his two friends from Los Angeles in greater detail, but just to say that it's a privilege to have everyone here with us today. It's taking some time out from their schedule at on 10 o'clock in the morning. Maybe it's getting on 10 o'clock for you guys. Not too bad.
Yeah,
but so you're going to round us out in the last half hour of our presentation from here in New York City. Please welcome Richard Modiano.
Well, thank you, George, and thank you for having us as part of this terrific series that you've constructed, and particularly being sponsored by the Walt Whitman Birthplace, because, you know, as we know, Whitman was the poet of demotic speech, the speech of everyday language. He brought that into American poetry, and that has been the vital stream that started with Whitman and has continued from the 19th century down to the present. And in the poets that I picked for this triptych, and we're going to hear from Iris, although I will be reading Iris's work. And I want her to be in this because I wanted to show the sort of range of poetry here in Los Angeles. Los Angeles County has, according to the 2020 census, we have 242 different languages spoken in Los Angeles County. And within Los Angeles City proper, it's something like 184. And we are just going to be hearing from the English language speakers today, but there is a tremendous mine of poetry here in Los Angeles that is still being explored. So, but nonetheless, you know, as Japanese poets say, shino kotoba wa sakaiketi desu, which is the language of poetry is universal. And all of our poets bring their own particular sensibility to their experiences, but they speak in the vox populi, the language of the people, which was also part of the legacy of Walt Whitman. So a few words about Iris Berry. She is a poet, publisher, fiction writer, creative nonfiction writer, actor, and I wish we could have her beautiful presence with us, but I will do my best to substitute for her. So this first poem is As Good as It Gets. In the past 2 years, I've learned that just because you're loyal, honest, and devoted doesn't mean it will be reciprocated. That sometimes, sadly, no good deed goes unpunished, and most movies do not resemble real life, especially the ones with big budgets. And when my grandmothers told me about men is true. I've also learned that no matter how much you know and love somebody, they can still have secrets that could break your heart and possibly kill you. I've also learned don't rely on fortune cookies, but never let a good wishbone go to waste, that nothing is personal and everything is personal. No one is perfect, especially me. And the more mistakes I make, the more human and nice I am towards you. And the more powerful I think I am, the more danger I am in. I've learned that everyone dies, some quickly, some slowly. So it's best to live the life you really want. It's taken me forever to realize that I still haven't grown up, and that somehow I still have the fantasy that as long as I am a good person, life will get better. But what I've really learned is the clock is tick, tick, ticking, and maybe I should do my best to leave this place with a smile on my face and love in my heart for you, for me, and maybe that's as good as it gets. And if that's the case, I will consider myself lucky. Iris Berry. Let's see. Daddy's Girl. He despised humanity and had no patience for it whatsoever, except when it came to bag ladies and skid row bums. When I was 5, he'd take me on tours of the city. We'd start at the beach, take the Sunset Strip, pointing out all the glamour spots through Hollywood to downtown LA. And as always, our last stop would be Skid Row. And he'd say, Iris, this is real life. This is it. Those who can afford it can't understand it. And those who understand it can't afford it. Then he would give me money to hand out to all the winos as if we were feeding pigeons in the park. He was a real Robin Hood, a hustler with a heart of gold. He loved to get over it, thrived on it, even down to the little things like long lines at the movies, and he would use his wounded vet story, and it got him in ahead of everybody else every time. Most of our food, furniture, and appliances were stolen or gotten through one kind of hustle or another. I remember when we got our first color TV stereo console, my mother screaming, something like, don't get used to it because it's probably hot. So, Daddy's Girl by Iris Berry. And finally, this last one, Loan Sharks for Stolen Hearts. I remember how you sat by my bedside that time I was in the hospital and you spent the night. It was the most time we ever spent together since I was 17. Going under the knife, I watched you watch me sign papers that stated results of my surgery may cause infertility. You looked so worried. I've never seen you look like that. I was shocked. You were always so bulletproof and the superhero, never showing any worry, needs, or pain, and never complained or said a bad word about Mom the way she did about you. You even scolded me once for being mad at her, and you never scolded me. Others spent more time with you because of my mother's disdain for that, and for that I am jealous. And the many nights I've cried, I hear all these great stories from cousins, how wonderful you were to them, and how generous, and how much they loved you. And you were some kind of rock god or movie star. And of course, they always throw in, oh, Iris, he loved you so much. But that doesn't ease anything. Yes, it's lovely to know. I always did know. I just rarely got to feel. Love from a distance is like shooting bad dope, waiting for a rush that never comes. I don't blame you. I don't know who to blame. It wouldn't matter anyway. There are some emotional debts that can never be repaid, and there's no Shylock for this one. I'm just glad we got to spend that time together. It meant a lot to me, and I know how much you hated hospitals. Iris Berry. And I'd like to bring S.A. Griffin up next. S.A. is a seminal figure in Los Angeles poetry. He is part of this Whitman lineage that I've mentioned before, and his poetry has a tremendous range. He addresses the personal. He talks about the world events. We're very good friends. We have a lot of conversations, and we talk about everything under the sun. And somehow he brings this into his poetry with an open mind and an open heart. And there is a vulnerability in S.A.'s work that makes him, in my view, a poetry bodhisattva, because he has this power to empathize with other people who are different than himself. And at the same time, his language is flexible, clear, accessible, and used to great effect. So please welcome S.A. Griffin.
That's a hard introduction to follow. And I'm honored to be here with all of you today. And really, it's wonderful and exciting to hear voices from around the world and to be here together today. And especially because I have American, some lineage from Ireland and from County Cork. On both sides of my family, it's really cool to hear the Irish poets. And I am going to comment briefly on George asked me to comment on this. Why is Casablanca a Christmas movie? I've seen it so many fucking times. I don't even know how many times I've seen it. It's birth and rebirth. Love conquers all. It's, you know what I mean? And Casablanca is like champagne. It goes with anything. But I love that. I loved all the poetry. It's really fantastic. So I put together a bit of a charcuterie. So here we go. This was a billboard back in 2003. A friend of mine from the punk days actually owned this billboard for a while. And out of the blue asked me if I wanted to put a poem on a billboard, which is like, what do I do? So I addressed what I knew was the oncoming desert storm forever. And this was a billboard corner in Los Angeles, very busy corner. I choose not to believe in war, holy or not. If I were Christ, it would be a drink of water. If I were Buddha, I would gladly kill myself in the garden of your eyes forever. If I were Muhammad, Mecca would journey in your touch. If I were a Jew, the Holy Land would be the covenant of my blood, singing Hosanna in your veins. If I were an atheist, all your every footfall, God, leaving footprints in the moment. And I was sired in Ohio, born in Texas. I'm from California. So make no mistake about it. I'm California top to bottom, top, worked my way to the bottom, and here we are. Living the dream, man. Is my whole life, all I ever wanted to do was live in Los Angeles from the time I was like 5 years old. I heard about the smog and the traffic. I said, that sounds like a good plan. Glory to those for the people of Ukraine. Armed with an inspired lunacy is his own God, a nightmare for the modern era. As his terror campaign moves forward, the cult of war grows inside sovereign borders where all thoughts have been tried, found guilty.
Hello, everyone. I am
Of
hoping that
calculated risk blossom with a bright and terrible lust. The global light of muted lifetimes baked into the sacred tapestry of night. All the quiet stars falling like iron dice, tumbling into trapdoors of agony and tears ever after. And Dada celebrated its 100th birthday a few years ago. And this is for Dada. Yeah, baby. Dada is dead, rejoice. Dada invents intelligence in the mills of empty skulls. Dada is the bacteriological order of the sacred cow. Dada is art for babies and unemotional noise. Dada serves the sainted sweat of a meandering atmosphere. Dada without chaos is pity, the carnage of a purified humanity rising like an astral flower of fertile spasms magnified by pain out of mistrust for freedom. Dada accepts comets. Dada erects parallels for future anti-dogmatism that spits on humanity. Dada remains shit in different colors, whistling realities. Dada declares that feeling is ideas searching for the central essence of things. Dada is windows of the marvelous that does not exist for anyone to understand. Dada can hear all the military cleaving the air like piss in parable madness. Dada is a game of gathering words that die a little, unseen. Dada is the great ambassador of intelligent discussion that doesn't agree. Dada isn't a crime committed to please and adore you. Dada is a word, a boring human product. Excuse me. And this poem has an epigram by our late friend Scott Weinberg, the true genius of our crowd. Believe in love, it is all that we have. St. Patrick's Day 2020. It's here, the virus that eats old people. And yesterday I hit 66. Never thought this old flesh could be so appealing. An uneasy contract for a body shy at heart. Atlas reaches back, an itch he just has to scratch. The sky falls. Icarus flies into the sun on nitro bat wings. Boom goes the light. It's a whole new game of extraordinary innings. New borders are being drawn around a state of heightened emotions. Everyone in their right mind are emergent clowns painted in primary colors of angry, afraid, and sad. The elevator to fight or flight, no stop button moves swiftly as the swirling miasma of feelings shift electric sleep to a set of wheels. Big moments get small in less than a New York minute. A single week seems like years waiting for your ticket to ride. We all hang suspended in our collective disbelief. But there is still kindness in the world, compassion, civility. There is love. Get it while you can. Save it on an empty shelf somewhere in your heart. Remember where you put it in case of emergency. Don't be afraid to break the glass. Here and there, together and alone, we have never been where we are going. Although it is guaranteed, we will get there. Time abides. Abides. People too. So does the blushing heart that rises with every sun, laughing in the clover. So I will read this one more so I don't take up too much time. This was very, after seeing Endless Poetry by Alejandro Jodorowsky, whom this is dedicated to. The masterpiece of cinema. I highly recommend it. And thank you again for allowing me to be a part of this. It's a tremendous honor and pleasure. Endless Poetry. Success and failure ride the same rail, visit the same small towns and big cities, full of rise and fall, seated with genius and despair, full of practice, endless practice, banging away, eager finger of love, itching at existence. Life and love ride the same rail, whole and wholly brilliant, waiting for breaks beneath the same yellow sun, the big breaks, the small. But there are no big or little breaks, just breaks, full of failure and success, rise and fall, irrepressible blossoms of genius fair. And after having spent whatever it is you've got riding the rail, your mirror shattered by choices, all looking back at you, there you shall rest, endlessly broken, where life answers life and love is a butterfly. Thank you very much. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, George. And thank you.
Listen, S.A.
Yes.
We think that you cut out for a very brief period of time. We're having a little debate whether it was the end of the first poem or the middle of the second poem.
Oh.
But I think it was the second poem.
It was the middle of the second poem. It was the middle of the second poem.
So we'd like to invite you to read that second poem again.
Glory to the heroes. Okay. This is for the people of Ukraine. And I can't say enough things about Putin. I don't understand war. I grew up in violence. We live in a world of violence. And like John Lennon said, the reason he wrote about love is because he knew the other side. Glory to the heroes from the people of Ukraine. Armed with an inspired lunacy, Putin is his own god, a nightmare for the modern era. As his terror campaign moves forward, the cult of war grows inside sovereign borders where all thoughts have been tried and found guilty. The carriers of plague with looks that kill have landed with their tortured reward, lost lives on parade, collapse in despair as the people greet their makers of fear. Ritualized by the underwriters of conflict, the authorities' speech broadcast the intercepted letters of family and friends. History bends before the sea of bombs, flowers of evil, executing a catechism of calculated risk, blossom with and terrible lust, a global light of muted lifetimes baked into the sacred tapestry of night. All the quiet stars falling like iron dice, tumbling into trap doors of agony and tears ever after. Thank you.
Thanks, S.A. Our next poet is Ellyn Mabey, another sort of a legendary poet here in Los Angeles. Ellyn sort of rose from the ranks from open readings at different coffee houses in Los Angeles, starting in the late 1980s. And she has a unique voice. Lately, she's been, well, not lately, but for several years, she's been working with musicians, and her music, her poetry is a perfect fit for music because as Ezra Pound came up with this particular taxonomy, which he naturally being Pound put in Greek, the logopoeia, the melopoeia, and the panopoeia. In other words, the ideas, the music, and the images. So his theory was the ideas are embodied in the images, and the images are carried by the music. And when I was a kid, I actually met Charles Bukowski, and I asked him what did you need, what you needed to know to be a good poet. And he said, kid, you have to know how to drive all the horses at once. So at the time, I didn't know what he was talking about. But later on, I knew that this is what he was talking about, bringing all of these elements together in a poem. And that is a particular talent that Ellyn has. And she has her own, you will hear her own voice, which is special. She has a particular sensibility that, like essays and Iris's too, and I think this is what they have in common for me is their openness, their open hearts and their open minds to the world around them, and a way of articulating their own particular emotions in words that are accessible to other people. And they all three of them have the power to transmit this emotion to the reader. And of course, they are all three different voices and all three different ways of looking at the world. So now we are going to hear Ellyn's we're going to get Ellyn's take on what's happening. Ellyn, maybe take it away.
Thank you so much. This has been so exciting and wonderful. I wanted to read this one poem that seems because this is Zoom and it's called Zooming Through the World, and this is such a special use of it to have us all be together like this. This is so cool. So this is Zooming Through the World. Gratitude to the events happening around the world on Zoom, listening to readings, lectures, and concerts from all over the sphere is a wondrous thing. The logistics of turning on the computer and being in a library in Brooklyn, a museum in Portugal, a concert in Scandinavia, all is possible. Walking into Zoom is like a world encapsulated amidst the hum of time in an askew Dali universe. Melting clocks, Van Gogh sky, stars lifting their ears to whisper at us like a seashell, understanding how the world has become tiny like a thimble and large as an ocean eternity. Simultaneously seeking events in connection with all the ancient and new solitude, blending in a dance, learning new steps, twirling through the hemisphere, the future wearing invisible ink, unclear and profound. This is called Somewhere in the Sky. What if every moment you feel something happening, someone scattering daisies and someone throwing ash? What if you feel the bones of history and the ache of the land? What if you wake up and your head is a map in a million different languages? What if you are able to eat musical notes for breakfast and symphonies for snacks? What if documentaries are written in your eyelids like rain? What if you listen to everything written with the crescendo of breath? What if everything blended technicolor wonder, but only for an hour? Would you wake up early or stay up all night in order to find it? What if your sky shimmered with glitter? What if your hemisphere drizzled with doom? A thesaurus of moments, human in nature. Would you live in the clouds or relish Earth's hue? Perhaps life is a multiple choice question, my friend. The answer's in a circle dance with no beginning or end. And this is from an anthology of, Southern California poets called Beat Not Beat. And it just recently came out, and this poem was picked for that. And I'm just so excited. This is just so fun to hear people from all over. I'm glad we're doing this. So this is called 2016, the year the 20th century finally died. The year so many musicians died, in the year freedom seemed to be moving underground, caskets filled the air. We live in times of turmoil, clocks beating quicker and quicker, middle age seems old, seniors seem timeless. There's a lethargy in the way people move. There's a liturgy on the tip of our tongues. There's something in the morning cereal, it looks like newsprint. There's something in the evening news, it seems like farce, as though this couldn't be real. this over-the-top peek into tragedy's eyelid, this shiver that lives in our psyche like snow. We ski into another winter. The world is on a ski lift. Cocoa is leaving its face around a cup. We stir and it's January. We stir and it's the 20th century. We stir and it looks like it's black and white newsreels. History tries to repeat itself as a people in power like sequels. People wear the hero mask, the death mask, the face, and the heart. People make choices. The stores sell everything. One of the strongest songs from Rodgers and Hammerstein, You've Got to Be Carefully Taught. Prejudging is the name of the game so many households play. Play Rummikub instead. Play solitaire. Don't be influenced by peers. 1 minute to midnight, but people don't know if the year will leave us dangling from some threshold. History said, look at me with your eyes aflame. Burn my pain in your memory. Walk into the libraries and kiss all the spines. The earth is spinning whether people stay on it or not. What if earth falls in the forest and nobody is there to hear it? The last person on earth will carry a pencil. That is why earth has survived this long. Thank you.
Richard. Richard, I'm looking at you, see if you have anything final to say about your group.
Oh, well, no, I just wanted to say thanks to Ellyn. And by the way, when Reverie was, the poem that Reverie dedicated to Latasha Harlan, she died senselessly here in Los Angeles in 1992. I believe she was 15 years old at the time. And that was 30 years ago. So she would have, had she lived, she'd be 45 years old today. But, we have our share of tragedies in Los Angeles. And I thought that little bit of explanation might, that's what I knew who Reverie was talking about. But once again, I'm very grateful to George and to the Whitman House for putting this on for us, and to our fellow poets from Ireland and from Texas. So it's been a great event.
Right. That's LA. Thank you again from LA. We, of course, I mentioned the Venice Beach and Beyond Baroque with so many different vortices of poetry, important vortices of poetry in LA. And Ellyn mentioned the Beat Not Beat anthology, very fine anthology. The Outlaw book of poetry.
Bible of American Poetry.
Yeah, which S.A. Griffin was a co-editor of, and with a due.
I co-edited Beat Not Beat as well.
Yeah, important work coming out of LA, and we have a very strong connection with LA here in New York. So, thank you. I'll just say this now, and this is our penultimate event in this second season of Poets Building Bridges. We've had an opportunity here internationally from Corsica, India, Wales, there's coming up Costa Rica, Colombia, Romania, and today Ireland. And a couple from New York City, including Rutherford, New Jersey, which is home of William Carlos Williams, up in Massachusetts and South Florida, middle portion of the country, including Dallas today and St. Louis and Erie, Kansas City, New Mexico, which I don't know where to place that, and then LA has finally gotten to us. We've had SLO and Santa Cruz with us, over the course of this year. So it's been a great year. We're meeting one more time, June 10th. That's Cleveland, Wales, and Somerville, Massachusetts, with Gloria Mindock and Savino Barbara Press. But it's been a fantastic show. This was one of the coolest we've had so far. So I contribute that to you guys. Plus, one of the most efficiently done of all. So an hour and a half was really just bite-sized for everybody who's going to be watching this on YouTube in the next couple of days. So on behalf of the Walt Whitman Birthplace, Robert Savino, and Lisa Pulitzer, I want to thank you all for joining us from Dallas, from Ireland, from Los Angeles, and bid you a fine Saturday afternoon in spring. Adios. Thank you all for joining us.